You know what's wild? One single magazine page from 1997 might have just dismantled the entire foundation of the modern royal fairy tale. We're not talking about a tweet or a Reddit theory or some blurry photo analyzed by armchair detectives. We're talking about printed ink, sitting in archives for nearly 3 decades, waiting for someone to actually look at it. And when Tom Bauer did, when he connected that one piece of evidence to everything else swirling around Meghan Markle, the whole carefully constructed timeline started cracking wide open. Because here's the thing about lies. They're only as strong as the details you can control. And in 1997, nobody was thinking about controlling a teenage magazine spread. Nobody imagined that years later, that throwaway page would become the smoking gun that doesn't just question Meghan's age, but makes you question everything: her Hollywood journey, her royal romance, those pregnancies that seemed just a bit too perfectly timed, and why her own father would risk public backlash to essentially say, the woman you think you know isn't who she claims to be. This isn't about vanity or insecurity. This is about what happens when you take Hollywood's favorite trick, shaving years off your biography, and try to pull it off inside an institution that survived 1,000 years by obsessing over bloodlines, dates, and records. What if the Duchess we've been watching, defending, or criticizing for years is actually playing a character? And what if that character's age is just the first thread that, when pulled, unravels something much bigger? Let's get into the evidence that started this whole investigation, because it's the kind of thing you can't wave away with a carefully worded palace statement. March 1997. 17 magazine publishes their standard feature, one of those future stars to watch type lists that every teen publication runs. Page 90. Meghan Markle, age 21. Now, pause right there. If you believe the official story, Meghan was born August 4, 1981. That means in March 1997, she would have been 15 years old, still in high school, probably stressing about her SATs. But this magazine, distributed to millions of households across America, printed in physical form that you can still verify today, says she was 21. That's not a typo. That's not someone misreading a submission form. That's a 6-year difference, a gap so massive it changes everything about her story. You can't accidentally add 6 years to someone's age. If anything, people lie the other direction. So either this magazine had the worst fact-checking in publishing history, or they printed exactly what they were told. And here's what makes it impossible to dismiss. This was published when Meghan was nobody. There was no reason to lie. No palace PR team managing her image. No billion-dollar brand to protect. It was just a girl trying to make it in Hollywood, submitting her real information to get noticed. Think about what this does to her entire Hollywood narrative. If she was actually born around 1975 or 1976, then when she landed that role on Deal or No Deal, she wasn't a fresh-faced 20-something grinding for her big break. She was a woman approaching her 30s, already aging out of the industry's cruelest demographic. The desperation changes, the timeline changes, and suddenly her meteoric rise to snag a prince starts looking less like fate and more like a very calculated final play. Before we go further, we need to talk about why this even matters. Because some of you are probably thinking, who cares if she lied about her age? Everyone in Hollywood does it. And you're right. They absolutely do. The entertainment industry is brutal about age, especially for women. You've got actresses in their late 20s getting told they're too old to play the love interest, while their male co-stars are pushing 50 and still getting cast as action heroes. It's disgusting. It's unfair. And it forces women to make impossible choices about their careers. We've seen it before. Gabrielle Carteris played a high schooler on Beverly Hills 90210 when she was nearly 30. Rachel McAdams was 25 playing a teenager in Mean Girls. The list goes on. Hollywood has always had this weird relationship with age, where youth is currency and admitting you're over 30 can literally end your career. So yeah, if Meghan Markle shaved a few years off her age to keep getting auditions, to stay competitive in an industry that would rather hire a 24-year-old nobody than a 30-year-old with experience, that's understandable. That's survival in a system that chews up women and spits them out the moment they stop looking like ingenues. But here's where Meghan's situation goes from Hollywood business as usual to something much more problematic. She didn't just lie to a casting director or fudge a number on an audition form. She carried that lie into the British royal family, one of the most documented, scrutinized, historically obsessed institutions on the planet. She married a prince, gave birth to children in the line of succession, and built an entire public brand on authenticity and truth-telling, all while potentially living under a false identity. That's not just bending the rules to survive. That's bringing Hollywood smoke and mirrors into a 1,000-year-old institution and betting nobody would notice. And that's when this stops being about Hollywood and starts being about something much more serious. Deception at the highest level. Now, let's talk about the one person whose testimony you can't easily dismiss. Her father. When Thomas Markle started speaking publicly about inconsistencies in Meghan's official timeline, it hit different than the usual tabloid speculation. This wasn't a jealous ex or a former friend with an axe to grind. This was the man who raised her, who remembered her childhood not from Google, but from lived experience. He remembered what grade she was in during specific years, when she graduated, when she started pursuing acting seriously. And according to Thomas, those memories don't line up with the official story the palace promoted. Think about what it takes for a father to do that, to essentially go public and say, "The narrative my daughter is selling doesn't match reality." That's not a decision you make lightly. Thomas Markle, for all his faults and messy media appearances, was there for the moments that matter. He held her baby photos. He paid for her education. He remembers birthdays not as Wikipedia entries, but as actual events he lived through. So when he hints that Meghan isn't as young as the palace presented her to be, when he suggests that her official birth year might have been adjusted somewhere along the way, it lands with weight that online theories never could. And here's what's haunting about his interviews. He doesn't scream or rant. He speaks carefully, almost sadly, like a man who knows he's torching his relationship with his daughter but feels compelled to set the record straight anyway. He talks about watching her construct a public image that didn't match the person he knew, about seeing her rewrite history in real time. Some people called him bitter. Others said he was chasing fame. But what if he was just a father who watched his daughter's ambition override truth and couldn't stay silent anymore? What if his testimony wasn't about revenge, but about legacy, about making sure that before this story gets completely cemented in history books, someone who actually knows the truth speaks up? Because once the royal machine accepts a narrative, it becomes fact. And Thomas knew if he didn't speak then, the real Meghan Markle timeline and all would be erased forever. Here's what blows my mind about this whole situation. The British royal family has survived centuries of scandals, wars, and political upheaval specifically because they are meticulous about records. They have an entire staff dedicated to genealogy, documentation, and historical accuracy. When Kate Middleton started dating Prince William, her entire family tree was researched back generations. They knew about her parents' business, her relatives, everything. Royal protocol demands it. So how on earth did a 6-year age discrepancy, documented in a nationally distributed American magazine, slip through the cracks? Either the vetting process failed spectacularly, or someone saw the inconsistency and decided it didn't matter. Both options are disturbing. If they failed to catch it, that means Harry rushed this marriage so fast that basic background verification got skipped. That means he was so infatuated, so desperate to lock this down, that he bypassed centuries of royal protocol designed specifically to prevent exactly this kind of situation. Or worse, maybe they did find it. Maybe someone in the palace dug up that 17 magazine page, saw the math didn't add up, and made a calculated decision that bringing Meghan into the family was worth ignoring the red flag. Maybe they thought a charismatic biracial American actress was exactly the modernization the monarchy needed, and a little fudged paperwork was a small price to pay. Either way, it represents a massive institutional failure. Because here's what people need to understand. This isn't just about vanity or insecurity. When you're marrying into a family where bloodline and succession matter, where children born from that union are literally in line for the throne, accuracy matters. Dates matter. Truth matters. You can't just show up with a flexible biography and expect nobody to care. The monarchy has strict rules about who can marry into the family, what documentation is required, what histories are acceptable. They've blocked marriages over far less controversial issues. So for this to slip through suggests either catastrophic negligence or willful blindness. And honestly, I'm not sure which is worse, because both scenarios mean the institution failed. And that failure is now playing out on the global stage. Now, let's talk about why the age issue isn't just about vanity or career ambition. Let's talk about biology, because this is where the discrepancy starts affecting medical realities that you can't just PR your way around. If Meghan was born in 1981, she was 37 when she gave birth to Archie in 2019. That's officially classified as a geriatric pregnancy, a clinical term that comes with increased risks and stricter medical monitoring. But if that 17 magazine is correct, if she was actually born around 1975 or 1976, then she wasn't 37 when Archie was born. She was 43 or 44. And that changes everything about how we should understand those pregnancies. Because a 43-year-old first-time mother faces exponentially higher risks. Higher rates of chromosomal abnormalities, gestational diabetes, preeclampsia, preterm delivery. This isn't judgment, it's medical fact. Fertility drops dramatically after 40, and the complications rise just as sharply. So when you layer this context onto all the bizarre inconsistencies surrounding Archie's birth, the secret of hospital choice, the contradictory timelines, the medical impossibilities in Harry's account, suddenly the control and secrecy start making sense in a different way. Think about it. If Meghan was in her early 40s trying to conceive, the pressure would have been immense. The royal family needs heirs. The public expected babies. And Meghan's entire value to the institution, let's be honest, was partly tied to her ability to produce those heirs. So what happens when your biological clock is running out faster than anyone realizes because you've been lying about your age for decades? What lengths would someone go to in order to hide that reality? Now, I'm not saying definitively what happened, but the surrogacy rumors that have swirled since day one, the way Meghan's bumps seem to change sizes dramatically between appearances, the fact that we've never seen a credible hospital photo, the way the birth story contradicts basic medical protocol, all of this hits different when you realize she might have been significantly older than anyone knew. It provides context for why everything surrounding those pregnancies felt so controlled, so scripted, so removed from normal royal birth procedures. Because maybe they weren't hiding vanity. Maybe they were hiding biology. And if your entire public image is built on being young, vibrant, and effortlessly achieving what you want, admitting that conception at your real age required extraordinary measures would shatter that carefully constructed narrative. Let's break down exactly why Tom Bower called the official Archie birth story lies. Because once you understand the medical realities, you can't unsee how impossible the palace narrative actually is. According to Harry's book, Spare, Meghan received 2 epidurals, gave birth in this serene wellness-style environment with birthing balls and candles, and then recovered and left Portland Hospital for Frogmore Cottage within 2 hours. Every single piece of that story contradicts medical protocol. First, 2 epidurals. Doctors have been very clear that's not how epidurals work. You don't get 2 separate procedures. An epidural is a continuous line of medication that can be adjusted, not something you double up on like taking extra Tylenol. So either Harry completely misunderstood what happened, or that detail was fabricated for dramatic effect. Second, the 2-hour turnaround. The drive alone from Portland Hospital to Frogmore Cottage takes about an hour, sometimes longer depending on traffic. That means everything else, delivery, observation, recovery, paperwork, discharge, had to happen in less than an hour. After an epidural, which requires waiting for the anesthesia to wear off, regaining feeling in your legs, stabilizing your blood pressure, and being medically cleared to leave. Women who've had epidurals know you can barely walk for hours afterward. The idea that Meghan delivered, recovered, and was home in 2 hours is medically absurd. Then there's the setting Harry described: birthing balls, ambient lighting, a spa-like atmosphere. That's lovely for low-risk, uncomplicated births. But Meghan was classified as high risk. She was over 35, possibly dealing with preeclampsia according to reports, and hospitals like Portland don't allow high-risk mothers to have wellness births. Protocol demands continuous monitoring, immediate access to emergency intervention, not candles and yoga balls. And if she truly had preeclampsia, one of the most dangerous pregnancy complications, she wouldn't have been discharged at all. Treatment involves magnesium sulfate, intensive blood pressure monitoring, and keeping the mother under observation for at least 24 to 48 hours. You don't go home in 2 hours. You don't even leave your hospital bed in 2 hours. Tom Bower's hospital insider confirmed that the story as told doesn't match Portland's procedures for high-risk births. And that's the smoking gun, not speculation, not theory, but someone who works there saying the official story is medically impossible. So why lie? Why construct this elaborate fairy tale that falls apart the moment anyone with medical knowledge examines it? Because the truth, whatever it is, must be worse than getting caught in an obvious lie. So let's pull back and look at what we're really dealing with here, because this story is bigger than just one woman's age or one suspicious birth. This is about what happens when you build an entire brand on authenticity while living a carefully constructed lie. Meghan and Harry have spent years positioning themselves as truth-tellers, as victims of an institution that suppressed their authentic selves, as brave rebels who escaped to live honestly. They've done Oprah interviews about their truth. They've released documentaries about their truth. Harry wrote an entire memoir supposedly laying everything bare. And yet, if these revelations are accurate, the foundation of their entire narrative is fake. How can you claim to be silenced and suppressed when you're the one controlling information, hiding records, and rewriting history? How can you sell authenticity when your age, your children's births, and your past are all wrapped in contradictions and medical impossibilities? The royal family, for all its faults, operates on documented lineage. They can trace bloodlines back centuries because records matter. Dates matter. Truth, even uncomfortable truth, matters more than image. But Meghan and Harry have done the opposite. They've prioritized the story over the facts, the narrative over the evidence. And now it's collapsing. Because here's the thing about lies. They require constant maintenance. You have to remember what you said. Keep your story straight. Make sure no old magazines are floating around with inconvenient dates. And eventually you slip. Eventually someone like Tom Bauer comes along, pulls one thread, and the whole thing unravels. So ask yourself this. If they lied about her age, what else are they lying about? If the birth stories are medically impossible, what really happened? And if their entire public image is this carefully constructed, can we believe anything they say? Drop your thoughts in the comments because this conversation is far from over. Hit that subscribe button because we're going to keep digging into the stories the palace doesn't want you questioning. And remember, the truth isn't always pretty, but it's always worth finding. Because in a world of carefully managed images and PR-approved narratives, sometimes the most radical thing you can do is simply ask, what if everything we've been told is a lie? And once you start asking that question, you can never stop seeing the cracks in the fairy tale.